Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome back to another video for EVE Online. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Gallente Federation's Tech 3 tactical destroyer, the Hecate. This has been a heavily requested video. A lot of you folks have been asking for this for quite a while. Since I put out the Svipple, the Confessor, and more recently the Jackdaw video, I've had a lot of, hey, what about the Hecate? Have you forgotten about the Gallente Federation? No, I was just getting around to this one, and oh boy, is it good? Is it bad? That's a very interesting question that I had a lot of fun answering, and I mean a lot. Genuinely, I have not laughed as hard as I have making this video in a long time, and hopefully you folks will really enjoy that too. Now, I want to give a big thank you and shout out to everyone who helped support this channel financially. Obviously, the names will appear in the credits section at the end of this video, and I will talk later on about how you too can support this channel. But if you just want to do it nice and quickly and easily, hit like, drop a comment down below. Both those things really help me out and are completely free to do. Finally, if you are fairly new to EVE Online, if you haven't used a referral link, head down to the description of this video. You can click the referral link there. I get a small kickback. You earn 1 million free skill points to get you started. Finally, while you're down there, click on the Catskull community Discord. That's how much I've enjoyed this video. I can't talk properly. The Catskull community Discord. You can join us, have a chat there about all things EVE Online and other space-related games, and consider even joining the Catskull Cartel Corporation in EVE Online. Whew. Anyway, all of that said and done then, let's jump right in because, oh boy, this is a fun one, folks. The Hecate Tactical Destroyer is a really unusual ship. Like all of the other tactical destroyers, it has 3 activatable modes: Defense Mode, Propulsion Mode, and Sharpshooter Mode that you can activate to get certain bonuses for your vessel. These are on a 10-second cooldown, so once you activate, say, Propulsion Mode, it's 10 seconds before you can then shift into Sharpshooter or into Defense, and obviously only one of these modes can be active at any time. We'll talk about the modes in a brief moment a bit more, but for now, just accept that they're a little bit different to how they are on the other T3Ds. Starting off, though, with the Hecate's Gallente Tactical Destroyer bonuses. Now, interestingly enough, I'm actually only Gallente Tactical Destroyer 4 at this point in time. This is one of those skills I keep meaning to go back and train, but keep getting sidetracked by other things to showcase all you lovely people. So anyway, Gallente Tactical Destroyer gives you a 3% bonus to small hybrid turret rate of fire, a 7.5% bonus to small hybrid turret tracking speed, and a 5% reduction in module heat damage amount taken. This means for me, at Gallente Tactical Destroyer 4, I'm getting a 12% bonus to turret rate of fire, a 30% bonus to the tracking speed, and a 20% reduction in module heat damage taken. Now, these are really quite cool bonuses. That rate of fire is a straight-up DPS increase. Admittedly, a lot of the ships that I've flown recently, like the heavy assault cruisers, tend to have that as a 5% per level rate of fire, so it feels a little bit lower, but obviously this is a ship that still kicks out a ton of DPS anyway, and so that's probably a balancing thing to not just give it the 5%, because 20% and 25%, whoo, that's a lot of extra DPS on an already very powerful vessel. The 30% bonus to the tracking speed, again, very nice, especially if we're going to be using blasters. Blasters already have really good tracking speed, and this just means that if you're zooming around the battlefield and your opponents are zooming around as well, you're still going to be actually able to apply to them really quite effectively. What I really love, though, is this module heat damage taken. With the Hecate, I find that I really have to overheat a lot of its modules quite frequently, and why wouldn't you? But the reduction in heat damage there means you can do this more often without having to worry about it quite so much. I'm renowned for overheating a module and then just kind of going and putting the kettle on, forgetting about it, coming back and going, why aren't my blasters working anymore? And this is kind of the point. We'll showcase this a little bit more in the fitting section later, but by overheating modules, you can do a lot of really interesting things with this ship. What this kind of means to me is that the Hecate is a very high skill floor ship. It's very high skill ceiling, though, as well. Essentially, there's a lot to overcome to fly this effectively, but the better you are as an actual pilot, then this ship is just going to really sing. Anyway, let's have a look at the miscellaneous bonuses, then the different modes. So first of all, the miscellaneous bonus here, kind of like a roll bonus, 33% bonus to small hybrid turret damage, nice extra DPS, and a 95% reduction in scan probe launcher, survey probe launcher CPU requirements. This allows you to essentially fit something like a scanner probe launcher into those high slots without having to worry too much about how much CPU that's going to use. Very useful for us, obviously, as we are in J-space. The ability to scan down and exit Wormhole in a pinch, always a nice thing to have. And the additional hybrid turret damage, again, it's nice. This applies a lot of extra DPS to this vessel, as we'll see in a moment. But then we have the 3 different modes. First of all, defense mode. This gives you a 33% bonus to all armor and hull resistances and a 33% reduction to armor repairer duration. Now, interestingly enough, this is really quite narrow compared to some of the others, and considering its armor and hull resistances and a Galente vessel, I would have kind of liked to have seen this also have hull repairer duration, but again, this really doesn't matter. With the fit that we're going to be showcasing, we're actually never going to touch defense mode because there's no point. Like, really, the other 2 modes are going to be flat out better for us because, spoiler alert, we're going to be shield tanking. Yeah, really. Then we have propulsion mode. Propulsion mode, when activated, is going to give you a 66.6% bonus to Microwarpdrive speed boost and a reduction in the capacitor use of those Microwarpdrives, alongside a 66.6% bonus to ship inertia modifier. Now, this is interesting because propulsion mode on the others allows for basic flight velocity adjustments, including afterburners, whereas here it's purely on Microwarpdrives, but doesn't notably have the bloom reduction like you'd see on, say, an assault frigate. This means that the Hecate is definitely a Microwarpdrive ship. It gets mad bonuses to it, and in fact, without a Microwarpdrive active, it is an incredibly slow and cumbersome vessel, even for a destroyer. In fact, especially for a destroyer. If you look at the side here, navigation 225 meters per second. It's an incredibly slow ship without a Microwarpdrive active. But if the Microwarpdrive is active, yeah, you're getting a absolutely bonkers speed boost with that running. And having the additional inertia modifier, very, very nice. It allows you to keep tighter orbits. There are a lot of times when you're going to be spending most of your time in propulsion mode. Again, we'll talk about that later in the fitting and the combat section, but notably, whilst propulsion mode is active, you've got an almost instant align and warp time. That is just bonkers powerful. If you are in a bad situation, if it looks like you're about to die, you can warp off very, very quickly. Just literally warp to a target, swap into propulsion mode if you haven't already, and boom, you're gone. You are just gone, leaving whatever it was that scared you in your dust. And in addition to this, you know, it's just... that makes it actually really useful for PvP, because you can just quickly get into a situation. Someone else has tackled something, you can be on it in seconds. You are a little bit further away from a target, you want to close the gap quickly, rather than having to activate a Microwarpdrive and wait while your ship slowly accelerates up to that new maximum velocity. Nope. With that inertia modifier, boom, you are at your new speed in seconds. It's 0 to 60 in ridiculous speed. Finally then, we have Sharpshooter mode, 66.6% bonus to small hybrid turret optimal range, 33% bonus to small hybrid turret damage, 100% bonus to sensor strength and targeting range, 66.6 increased resistances against hostile sensor dampeners and weapon disruptors. Essentially what you're looking at here is longer locking range, longer range with the actual weapons themselves, and yeah, a little bit of more damage. More damage is always a nice thing, but it's a bit of a strange one, because optimal range on blasters isn't particularly great, and you're going to really struggle to fit rifled rails into a Hecate due to the power grid issues that this ship has innately. So yeah, okay, you get longer locking range, longer optimal range, and all this kind of thing, but the weapons you're going to be using don't really benefit. Sharpshooter mode just gives you a 33% DPS increase, which is really nice, don't get me wrong, but you'll find that actually you spend a lot of your time in propulsion mode, only switching to Sharpshooter when you really want that extra bit of DPS coming out the gate. And a lot of this will make more sense when we discuss the fit, so, well, let's do that. So this is the fit that I've been running on the Hecate, and ultimately I'm going to link this in the description down below so you can copy paste it into the game, see how that works with your skills, or copy paste it into Python or whatever you fancy in order to get that up and running. What we're getting from this is a variable ship here that if we pop into Sharpshooter mode, you'll notice that the graphics on this aren't overly exciting compared to some of the other Tech 3 destroyers, but it's something, right? We're getting pretty decent capacitor, well, we're getting capacitor stability, 1.6 gigajoules per second of delta. It's not great, but it'll do, right? It gets the job done. That is coming at 716.3 DPS, which is just bonkers crazy good. Defense, pretty fragile, 5,872. That is with resistances of 50 to 70%. 50% on electromagnetic and explosive, 70% on thermal and kinetic. Our targeting, yeah, okay, we can lock all the way out to 125 kilometers. That's fantastic, right? Who cares? Because our weapons really don't have that kind of range to them. They don't need that kind of range. 1,557.6 meters per second standard with the micro warp drive. If we go back into propulsion mode, 2,446 meters per second. Bonkers speed there going on. 2.9 second align time, that's with a micro warp drive active. Like if we turn the micro warp drive active off, 1.97. Either way, you're getting sub 3 seconds even with the micro warp drive online. That's just crazy good. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, our high slots are light Neutron Blaster 2s. Here with void ammunition loaded, we've got an optimal range of 1.6 with a fall off of 3.2. This does mean you're basically out of range once you hit 4.5 to 5 kilometers. So you do really have to be up close and personal, sniffing their armpits in order to apply damage, hence the micro warp drive. Our utility high slot is going to be a Sister's Core probe launcher, so that we have the ability to scan down the wormholes as they appear or disappear or whatever. Couldn't quite fit and expanded in here. Again, rejigging some of the fit around might work, but considering we're PvE fit, I don't mind that too much. And I've got a PvP fit that I use separately that does get the expanded in. For tanking, you'll see we've gone for shield, so this means a small shield booster 2 alongside a thermal shield hardener 2 and an EM shield hardener 2. That's how we get these resistances up here. Ultimately, yeah, you have very low EHP, you're going to take a lot of damage, and actually our shield boost isn't great either, 15.6 HP per second. Fortunately, we are small, we are fast, we can kind of avoid most of the incoming damage. Admittedly, with the micro warp drive active, 446 meters, that's big. Without it on though, we're only 75 meters. So understanding when to switch between propulsion and sharpshooter and micro warp drive active and deactive is going to make or break your abilities to pilot this vessel in PvE. For our low slots then, I've gone for 2 magnetic field stabilizer 2s and 2 capacitor power relays. Capacitor power relays are what are helping us keep this capacitance up. The fact that we can have everything running, including the micro warp drive, and still be cap stable with this does really help. I did consider trying batteries, but getting them in with the power grid, incredibly difficult to do, not a great idea. Same as essentially, again, a lot of people said, well, you could go for a railgun Hecate, and I know some people do use a railgun Hecate for like DED site running. To me, though, it just, there are so many sacrifices you have to make because of that, because of the additional power grid requirements of the rifled railguns. It's not great. It's not great. And I like the DPS for blasters. It makes me happy that I can go into sharpshooter mode and get 716 DPS. For the rigs then, we have a small core defense field extender 2, just to get a bit more HP out of those shields, and 2 small capacitor control circuit 2s, again, just to help with the capacitor, keeping us nice and stable. Now, before we jump into the combat demonstration section of this video, again, I want to really iterate that the whole point of this was to ask the question, can you use a Hecate in PvE? And the answer is a firm yes. Yes, you can. I'm not particularly convinced you should do. It's great fun, but it's pretty risky, and there are definitely better options for the same sort of price tag. 160 million ISK is not the cheapest for a C2 site runner. There's definitely more expensive fits out there for sure, but considering the inherent risk of running this, I'm not convinced it's a great idea. It's just fantastic good fun to fly this. So let's jump into that combat demonstration and showcase why I was laughing my head off whilst I made this video. Before we hit that combat demonstration section, I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to every one of my Patreon supporters, as they are the folks who really help keep this channel going. If you want to donate to my Patreon, head to the Patreon link in the description of this video. You'll get your name in the stars at the end of the video, like every single one of those awesome people who keep this channel going. I do also have a PayPal tip jar if you're more of a, I just want to make a one-off donation kind of guy. And again, thank you so much to everyone who does that. It means the world to me. I read all of the messages that you guys send with those tips and donations. I do try to respond to as many of them as I can do, but real life sometimes gets in the way. Finally, I do have a Redbubble merchandise store as well, if you fancy some Captain Benzie exclusive swag. Things like Cat Skull Academy t-shirts, mugs, notebooks, that kind of jazz, all available there as well. And it gets you something cool, and it helps me out as well. Anyway, all of that said and done, thank you to everyone who can support the channel. If you can't financially, that's fine. I don't expect it of anyone. Just hit like and drop a comment on the video. That really helps out too. Let's jump into that combat section then, folks. Now, before we go any further into this combat demonstration, I need to absolutely say that the purpose of this video was answering the question, can you fly the Hecate in PvE? Not, should you? And the answer to the can you is, yeah, absolutely. The answer to the should you, on the other hand, is probably no. With the Hecate built the way it is very much a PvP-themed ship, but it can do PvE content if you really want it to. And actually, it's good fun. It may definitely not be ideal at this. It requires a lot of micromanagement to make it work, and even then you come very close to losing the ship repeatedly. But it is just crazy good fun to fly. What you'll see me doing here is essentially I'm trying to use the Microwarpdrive to close the gap to a target where I'm orbiting at about 1,000 meters. What you should be doing ideally is hitting orbit on the target, activating the Microwarpdrive and swapping into propulsion mode. Propulsion mode then keeps you kind of orbiting the target nice and tightly. You then turn off the Microwarpdrive once you're in a close orbit and just rip them a new one with your blasters up close and personal. As you can see, I'm not very good at swapping between propulsion and sharpshooter mode, and I often forget to turn the Microwarpdrive off, or I turn it on too early, that kind of thing. You'll see that here, like for example, I shoot past it, I kind of slingshot, I'm now at 4,000 meters away, which means my application isn't great, and we go all the way down to like 100 meters per second of movement speed. It means I'm taking a bit more damage than perhaps I should do. Remember, we don't have particularly good shield boosters. And I'm just a little bit too far away. But once we start getting the application, boom, everything goes down quickly. Here, though, we've got the new wave spawning in this perimeter hangar. This time, activate the Microwarpdrive, close range on that target. And again, I should have gone into propulsion mode quicker than that because it would put me up to that max speed faster and increases that max speed as well. Then it's a case of knowing when to switch off your Microwarpdrive. Here I switch off a bit too soon because I bounce off the thing. I lose all of my velocity on this. And that's really, really not good. I'm going to start taking a ton of extra damage, but we're going to overheat the shield booster just to handle that. Now here I'm actually going to stay in propulsion mode, or I should stay in propulsion mode, I hope I do, because it gives me that tight orbit. I don't need the additional DPS yet, I want the orbit first and foremost. Then I'll swap into sharpshooter mode once that orbit is a bit more stable around this escort to get that little bit of extra DPS out of it. I'm actually going to overheat my turrets as well, just to kick those right up. This pushes the DPS over 800 DPS and allows us just to chew through that battleship that little bit faster. Again, is this an ideal way of flying a vessel? No. Is it ridiculously micromanaging? Yes. Does it require you to overheat and thus carry a load of thermal, like nanite repair paste? Yeah. It's not a good fit. It's not a good option, but that doesn't stop it being ridiculously fun all the same. And just getting right up into a battleship's grill like this, not out here, the battleship can't hit me. What's doing all of that damage to me is the awakened escorts in the distance, and those sadly do actually cause quite a bit of damage. And you'll see that I do get pushed quite low into armor, even with the shield booster being overheated. Once I have this sleepless escort down though, and I'm orbiting the awakened escorts, again, it's a matter of surviving there is a lot easier. I take a lot less damage. It's the fact that the Hecate is just so absolutely ridiculously slow when it doesn't have a prop mod running. Like 211 meters per second for a destroyer, really? It just feels awful. Anyway, here again, I should have changed into propulsion mode a little bit faster. I do remember to this time. It gets you up to that top speed a little bit faster, and it means that when you turn the Microwarpdrive off when you're in range, you slow back down to 0 faster rather than having this weird slingshot rubber band effect. Should have turned the Microwarpdrive off sooner than that. The last cycle would have been enough, but you see my armor is right down at its lowest point here. No Microwarpdrive on though means my signature radius does drop back to 75 meters, down from 400 and whatever it was. And you'll see, now that I'm orbiting the target here, right up in its grill, I'm taking very little damage, and the shield booster is actually boosting my shields back up, which is always a positive thing, right? We want our shield boosters to be boosting our shields. That's kind of their main purpose in life. There we are, that one goes down, awakened escort. Again, we are just going to Microwarpdrive towards it with a short orbit, turn the Microwarpdrive off after a single cycle, Here I turn into the sharpshooter mode way too early, which means I have not got my orbit set up properly with propulsion mode. I'm going to go back into propulsion mode because otherwise I'm slingshotting away. I'm completely out of range at this point. Completely out of range at this point. That is just not going to do anything for me. And I'm just playing around and kind of slingshotting around this thing. It's just literally stay in propulsion mode, use the micro warp drive. Once that's off, you should be able to maintain a better orbit than I'm able to here. And you go into the sharpshooter mode at the end. Once you've got the orbit established, that's when you move into sharpshooter mode. Again, I say this in most of my videos, I fly it like an idiot so that you don't have to. And if I can survive, then if you fly it better, you'll do okay too. Finally though, is this a good option? No. No, the Hecate is absolutely a PvP ship, not a PvE ship. But you can make it work, and it is good fun to try. So if you do give it a try, let me know. Drop a comment down below, hit like on the video if you chuckled at this at all, because my goodness, I am just blown away with how awful this ship is, yet how much fun it is to fly. Those two things make no sense to me. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.